Welcome to this video series on frequently asked questions about the Java language. In this ongoing series of videos, we'll answer commonly asked questions about the Java language. You'll come away from this video with a solution to a question that you as a developer may have. In fact, these questions have been asked thousands of times by developers, so you're not alone. Our approach to every question is simple. First, we pose the question about the Java language, Java development, or best practices. Then we fill in any background material so the question makes sense. Next, we'll get into the details of the question and discuss it further. Then we'll come up with an answer. As a bonus, we'll go deeper on the answer and look at a code sample, showing you what to do and in some cases, what not to do with the counterexample. Stick around until the very end of the video where we'll discuss the solution from an application security point of view. We'll let you know what to watch out for to ensure your code stays secure. For more videos like this, like and subscribe to be among the first to know when we release something new. Ready to get started? Let's go. So the question we answer in this video is, how can we parse JSON in Java? This is a great question, and we could spend hours discussing the nuances of this topic. In this video, we'll present a JSON file or document, discuss the format, and pull out some of the data elements in an example Java application. First, let's talk about JSON. What is it? JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation. It's a language-independent data format that can be used to express objects as a human-readable list of properties. The data format represents an object as a curly brace delimited set with a comma-separated list of properties in between to represent the properties and state of the object. For each property, the name is expressed as a double-quoted string. The property string name is followed by a colon character, which is followed by the value of the property, which is one of the allowed JSON types. The supported types are number, string, boolean, array, object, and null. Numbers are unadorned by any punctuation, such as double quotes, so you'll see a number all by itself. A string will be surrounded by double quotes. A boolean will be either true or false. Null will be the word null. An opening and closing set of curly braces will represent a JSON object. And finally, an array is represented by an opening and closing set of square brackets. Of course, an object or array can be nested and contain additional objects or arrays, so a JSON object can be quite complex. Let's take a look at a short example JSON object. A few things to note about this object. First, you'll see it's an anonymous object, meaning it doesn't have a name in double quotes followed by a colon before the opening curly brace. The overall object has 4 properties. They include 2 strings, first name and last name, age, which is a number, and another object called address. Notice address is not an anonymous object since it has a name, a colon, and then a set of curly braces. Within the address object, we see 4 properties. They're all strings: street address, city, state, and postal code. When it comes to parsing a JSON object, there's no consensus library to use in Java. As of the creation of this video, there are more than 20 third-party libraries available for parsing JSON. However, there are a few that are more widely used. They include JSON from Google, JSON from json.org, and Jackson DataBind. Because these are third-party libraries, they will require the use of a dependency manager, such as Maven or Gradle, to add them to your project. If we assume that we'll be using Maven, then we'll have a file called pom.xml in our project. We'll need to add the dependency information for the library we wish to use to our dependencies section. For example, if we wish to use the JSON library, we would add a section to XML that looks like this. The key pieces here are the group ID, artifact ID, and version. The group and artifact represent the library we wish to use, and the version specifies the exact version of the library we wish to include in our project. Now that we have some background, let's take a look at some code for parsing a JSON file. I went ahead and set up a project in IntelliJ IDEA in a Windows 10 environment. Let's create a new class. We'll call it JSON01. We'll use the PSVM shortcut from IntelliJ to create our main method, In our example application, we'll be parsing the JSON document we saw earlier in the slides. I'll go ahead and paste it here for us to review. I'll need to comment this out so IntelliJ won't complain as we develop our solution. There are lots of ways to get a JSON file into our application. We could read it from a file, we could read it from a database, we could receive it as user input. However, these solutions are all beyond the scope of the project that we're providing here. For this simple program, we'll just hard-code it into our application and read it from a string. Let's go ahead and create a variable of type string called myJSONString. We'll set it equal to an empty string for the moment. Then let's go ahead and initialize our string with the JSON file above from our comment. First, notice that IntelliJ does an excellent job of adding and escaping double quotes to make the string error-free. However, I don't like the new line characters, that is, the \ns. So let's go in and remove those. To do that, let's go up to Edit in the menu bar and select Find, and then Replace. In the dialog that comes up, let's add a \n to the top line and nothing on the bottom line. And then let's click the Replace All button. This will get rid of the new line characters, which I think makes it more readable. Now let's think about what we want to do with this string. Let's sketch out our solution in comments. First, we'll read the string into a JSON structure. In this case, it will be a JSON object. Then we'll extract a data field. In our example, we'll get the value of city. And finally, we'll print out the result. Before we can do that, we'll need to select a third-party library to use to do the parsing and add it to our project. Let's jump over to the pom.xml file for this project and go down to the bottom of the file. We'll add a section called Dependencies, and then a dependency entry. IntelliJ fills in a lot of the fields for us. Now we'll select one of the popular JSON parsing libraries. We'll choose the JSON library from json.org. IntelliJ will go ahead and fill in the version for us, which is the latest version of this library. And that's it. We can close the POM file and go back to our code. Let's start entering the code now. I know that the JSON library has a class called JSON object that I want to use, so I'll go ahead and type that in. I'll create an object called obj and initialize it with the string we have. We see here that everything is red, which means the library isn't loaded. There are several ways that we can solve this in IntelliJ. I will right-click on the POM file, go down to Maven, and select Reload Project. This will cause the dependencies to be downloaded from Maven Central that we need. Now if I hover my mouse over the JSON object class name, I see the message Import Class. This means IntelliJ knows that there's a class available to us that will resolve the name. Let's select Import. The code turns black, which means everything was found. If we scroll to the top of the file, we see the proper import statement, which means everything is working. Let's go back to the code and continue. We'll add a variable called city of type string. Let's think about this for a minute. In the obj object above, we parsed our anonymous object so it contains our JSON file in parsed format. If we want the city, then we'll need to navigate through the anonymous object by naming the properties along the way down the chain to get what we want. So first, what we want is the address object. So we'll say get JSON object and specify the name of the object we want, which is address. Then we want the property represented by the city. It's a string, so we go ahead and say get string, and then we say city for the property. And that's it, simple. And now we just print it out. We use SOUF to create a printf statement. We add our message to the string, as well as the city variable. Now let's run the code. And when we do, we get the value in the city displayed, which is New York. Once this mechanism is worked out, we can start pulling out other pieces. Let's say we want the postal code too. We'll copy the exact line down and replace city with postal code for both the key and the variable name. And we'll do the same thing for the printf statement. We'll replace city with postal code there too, and then rerun the code. Nice. Now we have both the city and the postal code in our output. All right, let's consider parsing JSON in Java from an application security perspective. Are there security concerns around the issue? Well, the primary concern is around the use of third-party libraries. Make sure you know where the library came from. Is it being supported currently, and are there frequent releases that address feature, bug, and security issues? Are there any open security vulnerabilities against the library, and how significant are they? Are there any default settings in the library you should be aware of? Default settings can sometimes leave a library vulnerable to an exploit. Libraries and applications should always default to a secure state. In a future video, we'll discuss default configuration settings and how ignoring or not understanding them can leave your application vulnerable. We'll also create a video on researching disclosed vulnerabilities in your open source. There's a CWE to pay attention to in this area, CWE 1188, Insecure Default Initialization of Resource, among others. There are some other CWEs to pay attention to, including 1104, Use of Unmaintained Third-Party Components, and there's been an OWASP Top 10 item for years related to the use of vulnerable and outdated components. Thanks for watching. We hope you enjoyed the video. Please like, subscribe, and share this video with others. To get our free ebook on how to write more secure Java code, go to www.beginsecuretraining.com. When writing code, remember to always begin secure.